Okay, so as I said, starting out on the pilgrimage to the mountain, you have a sign that clearly states there are 3 stations: Lochbin on the summit and Religware. Many people think that the statue that was erected in 1932 is the first station. It really is the start of the pilgrimage, the finish of the pilgrimage, and the ideal meeting place. But it is not an official station. But it's no harm that they go around here saying some prayers. Of course, when you start doing the pilgrimage on Reek Sunday, you will meet many, many interesting characters. And, here's just one, for example. So, at this stage, the climbers are coming up the mountain. You will see quite a few people in bare feet. Now, I've been studying this mountain, I would say, for 25 years. I've never seen a woman in bare feet until last year. And not only did I see one, but I saw 3 of them. So it seems to be sort of a male thing that they do it with their bare feet. Why do they do it with their bare feet? They believe they're walking on sacred ground. So if we take the Muslims, they take off their shoes going into the temple, and it's all religious sites going back many years. The belief was that it was sacred ground. Modern people think it is penance. No, I disagree. I don't think there's any mention in history of saying that you climb this mountain in your bare feet because of penance. So as I said, you get to the crest, I don't know how it fixed the point, and you have Lochbin on. So you have to do 7 rounds saying 7 Our Fathers, 7 Hail Marys, and 7 Glory Bees, going around this, always going around clockwise. This is the traditional way of doing a station. From this, once you're finished, you're then facing into the very steep side of the mountain. And of course we meet our friend again on the way up. And this is the last part of Castlecourt, which is a very difficult climb for a lot of people. And once you enter the summit, you will read the sign here, the summit, which is the 2nd station. And it tells you what to do. It says to kneel, it says 7 Our Fathers, 7 Hail Marys, and 1 Creed. Pray near the chapel for the Pope's intention. Walk 15 times around the chapel. Again, you walk around clockwise, saying 15 Our Fathers, 15 Hail Marys, and 1 Creed. And then walk 7 times around Lava Porrick, saying 7 Our Fathers, 7 Hail Marys, and 1 Creed. And then you go down the west side of the mountain to the 3rd station, and you have finished the station of Croagh Patrick. So this is the type of scene you will get on the summit of the mountain. And as I say, you will meet lots of interesting characters. People have lots of reasons for coming here. Traditionally, back in the 1800s, young couples who were engaged to be married always climbed the mountain during their engagement. And this was meant to be a test to see how people react to it. There was also a tradition that you would not dig your new potatoes before Reek Sunday. So locally here, people thought it was bad luck if they did any crop before Reek Sunday. Of course, it's a very sacred site, and we have to respect those who go to the mountain and intend to pray. And there is the challenge, isn't it? We have these modern extreme sports, athletic sports climbing up the mountain. There are many mountains that they can climb and run on. Why is it that they've chosen a pilgrim site? And I think it's a challenge to us all to actually say, where do we want Croagh Patrick going forward? Do we want it to be retained like a Lourdes or like a tourism site? Or is it a site that will do everything? Because my experience of sites that do everything, you finish up with nothing.
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah, of course.
I'll let you go there. Please. If you look at the photograph there, the man on the extreme right is Peter McLernan. He comes from County Armagh. He's 84 years of age. He has climbed Croagh Patrick every single year in the last, I think it's 46 times. And last year I met him there, and he's just about able to get up. I just recognise him there now. Right.
Okay. So, in 2008, the first live broadcast of the mountain. So we were lucky that we had a nice day. The Archbishop of Tuam, Dr. Michael Neary, said Mass out in the open air. There's no doubt there's something special about this place, and it is spiritual, and you are closer to the gods when you are on the summit of this mountain. But what a stunning sight for people looking out on the bay, and it's many islands. So we were particularly lucky on that day. Of course, normally they erect a little glass house, and I think this could be Father Gibbons, who's up in Nap now, if I'm right. And of course you get many wonderful scenes of piety on the mountain. I said the 2 wings were built in 1961, which was the patrician year. One of the wings is used for confession. You have about a dozen confession boxes. Of course, now that we have less and less priests, this will be a challenge, giving confession on the summit. But of course, one of the options is to have a structure down on the ground where probably older priests can assist, and you can have confessions before you climb. That's one of the options. And on the other side, wing is where people receive. And again, it's all very efficient on both sides. And every pilgrim has got the opportunity to have his confession heard or communion. The last part of the station of the summit is Lababoric. And this is traditionally where people believe that Patrick laid down. Over the years, tons of rock has been taken as relics from this site. So as you can see, it's got the shape of a bed. That was facing the church, and this is facing out towards the bay. That's the sign that you see on it. And of course, before you finish your pilgrimage, you have an opportunity to have a cup of tea or a snack, and you have locals who have stalls. And I can assure you, all of this litter is cleaned up by this man here on the left that has this stall. But there are many people who climb here, they're not prepared. They go up in the wrong footwear, they go up in the wrong clothing, they don't bring a drink with them, which is hugely important. But if you do such a daft thing, you will always have the local stall holders who for weeks before that are bringing up the water and the tea and the milk and everything else. And of course the last thing you will get on the summit, these are another 2 carriages who probably brought their own food, is the stunning views from the summit. You get a 360-degree view from the summit of Croagh Patrick, and look at that for a view of the islands. So we really do live in a blessed place here. It's also, it is a passage of rite. Kids are allowed to climb at the age of 13 and 14. It is a family event, and it's one of the few events that maybe a boy of 14, besides going to say a football match with his dad, will go up the Reek with his dad. But there's not many events that they want to join in, and this is obviously one of them. And as I say, on the west side, the third station is Rilligwira, and you have 3 mounds of stones, and then you do the 7 rounds at each mound, and then you have the outer enclosure, and you do 7 rounds of the outer enclosure. But that is rarely used now today. So a lot of people come down on the westward side of the mountain and they do the rounds at the first station again. You see another chap coming down the mountain in his bare feet. And of course you'll always meet people that you know are famous people. Of course, who's on the left? David Coughlin. Archbishop Michael Leary, I must say, for the last 15 or 20 years, as he's been the Archbishop of June, as has his predecessors, have all attended Reek Sunday. It's a hugely important event in the Archdiocese of June. And of course, here we're doing a load of Kelly. So we have Princess Grace here. She visited the mountain in 1961. She was brought up by Father Tom Cummins, and of course for locals, this is Hugh Ryan just up here on the right. And so she blessed herself at the statue at the end of the mountain. And of course, Eamon de Valera came here in 1932, I think it was.
Who else is in that picture?
I don't know who else is in it. This man with the beard is Father Angelus. Angelus Park is named after him. He came here in 1904 when the Archbishop said this is going to be a national pilgrimage site. He started a book below the presbytery which they call the Annals of the Reek. It's a big old-fashioned ledger, and he wrote up one page in a meticulous hand every year on the conditions that people faced and who came to the mountain, who said the Mass or the sermon in English. So on Reek Sunday there's one sermon in English and one in Irish. He attended for nearly 50 years, and back in 1947 when he was ill, he still came down with the intention of doing it, but he got seriously ill and he died in the presbytery in Westport town. He was laid out like a state funeral, and seemed that the house was busy non-stop for 2 days, and he was put back in the train. So he's a Franciscan monk based in Dublin, or was based in Dublin. This is Dr. Walsh, who's a native of Newport town, but there again, he is showing that the tradition of the Archdiocese of June coming to greet the pilgrims on Reek Sunday. And of course there are many people. Of course, the stall holders obviously provide services. This is Matt Lockery. It's on the left-hand side. Matt climbed the mountain every day for 365 days, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and he got a lot of coverage. But Matt took some wonderful pictures, because to get a good picture, you have to be there when it happens. And the cloud does many wonderful things on the Reek. This is Croagh Fitzpatrick, who's a nephew of Owen Campbell, and Croagh is now the owner of Campbell's Pub. So 2 very important men in the Reek. And of course, we have heritage from Stephen Croagh. Every year they erect a stall. And this man comes from Pettigo, up in County Donegal. He's a Mr. Gallagher. And he said to me last year, he's come in here 50 years selling rosary beads and medals. And without fail, he has 2 stalls at the end of the Reek. And he comes every year without fail. And of course the church has a say as well. We've got Pat Cobb and Eamon here, and they're obviously taking down the takings for the day. Pat is the local church sacristan, and he's recently retired, but he always did a fantastic job. Reek Sunday. And I show you this photograph, Dr. Michael Neary on the left, Dr. Sean Brady in the centre. The important man in this photograph is John Cummins. John is the guardian of Croagh Patrick. He's been climbing the mountain at least 100 times a year, every year for the last 40 years. John is responsible for the maintenance of the church. The church is very exposed, and there's a lot of damage caused to it every winter. So John has to go up and fix it. And here's a photograph of John going on the roof, tarring the roof, painting the building, and it's always in immaculate condition. Now, are we on time? Anybody in a rush hour? Okay. The building of the church at the summit became a huge event. The Archbishop climbed in 1903, and he said this is the most sacred site, most historical site, and that the church facilities on the summit were poor. So he deemed that we will have a national pilgrimage and that we have to erect a better church. This attracted vast crowds. So in 1904 and 1905, this is Bridge Street, which is the main street of Westport. As you can see, vast crowds came. This is coming up to Campbell's Pub again, and they had a hotel on the left-hand side called the Croagh Patrick Hotel. That's another shot of it with the Model T Ford I should have had in the background. This is at the start of the pathway, and this is where Patrick's statue is today, which was erected in 1932. So this is before the statue there. But every house would have got involved in the pilgrimage serving teas. This is Sir William Petty's map. This was printed in 1685, so 330 years ago. When they drew this map, they wanted to show that there was a church on the summit. So there are churches we know from the archaeology, from maps, going back for 2,000 years on this mountain. This little church is after the famine. Obviously 1 million people died, so another 1 million people left Ireland. And the famine nearly died away after the famine. So Father Clark and Father Stevens, who were based out in Haggower, used to hear the stories from the people who were there about the great pilgrimages to Croagh Patrick. So they resolved to erect a church. So in 1882, they climbed the mountain with a number of workmen, and they erected this little cave-like church. And as you can see, there's a vast crowd going around on the outside of this church. This is the crowd that attended in 1904 when the Archbishop said we have to build a purpose-built church. And the cave church, all these men are just standing at the back of the cave church. And here we have a photograph of the Archbishop himself and Father Canavan, who was a curate here in town, standing beside him. And this, as you can see, numerous people from the paper, journalists taking notes. And this is when he appealed to the public to send funds for the building of Croagh Patrick. This obviously had the effect of an architect was employed, and this was a letter published in the paper appealing for funds, and these were the architect's drawings, and that's precisely the building that is now on the summit of the Reek. The church was dedicated on the 30th of July 1905. But what's interesting in this group, and I don't know if it's on purpose or not, women to the right and men to the left. So those who go back to church 50 years ago with the missions, we were all put on different sides. But it's the brass band here in the centre. We know Frank McCafferty, grandfather, was the leader of the band back then. And he was the leader of the band in 1905. 50 years later, they celebrated the 50th year of the church, the golden jubilee of the church, that he was still the leader of the band. That's the link there between the two of them. So that is the most historic picture there. And look at the dress and the clothing people wore their suits and their hats. And, you know, as you know, that would be difficult to climb on such clothing.
I remember.
Another nice shot of a group of Victorian ladies. And as I said earlier, we know there are other buildings in the church. We showed you the cave church. This is not the cave church. But this man is very reverent in front of this building. Now we don't know what this building is. It is no longer there. It's probably flattened, but some of it is there. We know there's another building just here. But the cave church is just to the front here, and this lady is facing it. So this is a photograph that shows you both churches. The 1882 church. So some people still have their attention on the old church, and obviously the new church is built. But obviously the photographer was able to call to the group, and many people posed in this picture. What's also interesting from an archaeological point of view are the different levels. That indicates different lumps on the ground and bumps and buildings. Soon after the building was built in 1905, this building was knocked down, and Lava Porrick is there today. This is inside the church, and in Latin it says, "Let us be Christians like the Romans." And in 1908, there was a wedding. The first wedding was on the summit. And this we believe is the actual wedding party. I don't have any proof of it, but the very fact that they're organised and they're all dressed in white, I think that indicates that there's something going on here. There's been about 12 weddings on the summit since then. Now, I'm nearly finished. Of course, in every sacred site and religious site you have relics. This was the most revered relic. It was Patrick's black bell. It was owned by the Geraghty family, and the Geraghties were the keepers of the bell for hundreds of years. This is the bell that traditionally Patrick banished the snakes into Lugnan, which is the Valley of the Demons, which is the quarry that I showed at the beginning of the slides. And you will see that it's mounted on a timber mount there. But this is the original state. And people, if they had a row, if two neighbours had a row, they would resolve to come and touch that bell and swear that they did not tell a lie. So there was a lot of power with this bell. It was also used for 1 penny. You can see that the pious pilgrim was allowed to kiss it for 1 penny, and if they had been affected by rheumatism pains, he might put it 3 times around his body for 2 pence. So 2 pence could get you double the cure. But it was a very revered relic for numerous different issues. Of course, going back, we had the night pilgrimage, and the night pilgrimage was obviously a fascinating event, but it was also abused because we had the pubs opening in town all night long. So you had a certain section of people that was an all-nighter in the pub, and other people climbing the mountain for praying, and then you had the third group who would leave the pub and climb the mountain, and there were lots of maybe accidents on the mountain. But what's interesting about this photograph is probably the only known photograph of the night pilgrimage. And I want to show this other one. This is the night pilgrimage to Mount Fuji. And what's very interesting is Croagh Patrick is the most extreme west of the known world before the Americans were found. And Mount Fuji was the most extreme east of the known world. They both have the same practices of going on high, climbing at night to pray to their gods.